political correspondent, talking about the polls. 3 weeks from yesterday is Election Day. Couldn't get here soon enough. Adam Kelsey, ABC News political correspondent. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so I heard somebody say the other day that Beto O'Rourke in Texas has a whole lot of energy in his base. Unfortunately, his base lives in New York.
I think that you could certainly say that O'Rourke has gotten a lot of support from around the country. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't have the support in Texas as well, and we've seen some polls that have him within single digits of Ted Cruz down in Texas. But if you take a look at the fundraising that Beto O'Rourke's done, $38 million over the course of the last 3 months, odds are that that's not all coming from Texas. So he's seen as a Democratic rising star. People are opening their wallets from California out to New York, as you said. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to be able to drive people out to the polls in just under 3 weeks.
Well, it sounds like Ted Cruz is starting to pull away a little bit.
Yeah, he's looked a little bit better in some of the polls that we've seen in recent weeks, and things got a little bit ugly last night. They debated again down in Texas. Ted Cruz really portrayed Beto O'Rourke as a member of the Democratic establishment. He basically said that, you shouldn't believe all of the campaign talk that you're seeing from him. Don't get sucked in by him riding a skateboard through a Whataburger parking lot, as we've seen a couple times. Ted Cruz basically saying that once he gets to Washington as a member of the Senate, he's probably just going to fall in line with Chuck Schumer and the rest of the Democrats.
Yeah, the national peeps talk about Texas. They talk about Nevada. They talk about Heidi Heitkamp. They seem to gloss over the Claire McCaskill, Josh Hawley race here in Missouri. Apparently, this is neck and neck.
It's going to be extremely close. And I'll say this about Claire McCaskill is that this isn't her first rodeo. She's gone through close races every single time she's run. This is her third in a row. Josh Hawley, a good candidate, another one of these young rising stars, this time in the Republican Party. But I keep bringing up fundraising because it makes a big difference in these last days of the campaign. And Claire McCaskill raised $30 million over the course of this election cycle. Josh Hawley just $8.5 million. Nothing to scoff at there, but $22 million gap is part of the reason why Democrats feel as if McCaskill may be okay. That's not to say she's a lock by any means necessary, but that $22 million extra as far as getting her on TV and on the radio to get her message out there, it certainly helps.
That's shocking. I can't believe that Josh Hawley, he's had a hard time raising funds the whole time. I find that shocking if this is such a nationally watched race that he would have a hard time raising money.
I mean, he still is relatively new to politics. That attorney general election was his first real foray into things. So sometimes it's about kind of building up your brand. And for Josh Hawley, the donations may have come from within Missouri, but he may have a tough time attracting donors from outside the state, which sometimes is a necessary evil, like we talked about with Beto O'Rourke. Yeah. So in that respect, McCaskill, more of a name brand.
Adam Kelsey, let's leave the House for a second and stay in the Senate. I've heard that the Senate could go anywhere from 57 Republicans all the way down to a Democratic Senate.
Yeah, we're seeing a wide range of possible outcomes here. The polls have been inconsistent, and you look at some of these states where you would have thought Democrats never had a chance. A state like Tennessee, for example, where Phil Bredesen is really running from the middle. He said he would have voted for Brett Kavanaugh. He said he would sit down and meet with Donald Trump. He's been able to attract some of the Republican and some of the crossover voters there in Tennessee. Democrats feel optimistic about that. On the flip side, there are still a lot of Republican red-leaning Donald Trump states out there where there are Democratic senators that we could see flip. You mentioned Heidi Heitkamp up in North Dakota a little bit earlier. John Tester in Montana is another one. Joe Manchin in West Virginia. These are all rock-solid Republican states that have crossed over to vote for Democratic senators in the past. And when you talk about as many as 57 Republicans, perhaps, in the next Senate, a lot of them would be coming from those states.
Yeah. What about the House? What's the latest on the House?
We still see the House as most likely leaning towards Democrats. We partner with we call them the nerds at 538 who do their forecasts. They give the Democrats a 6 in 7 chance of winning control of the House, 1 in 7 chance of Republicans keeping control. And whenever we talk about these numbers, people think 6 and 7, that must be a lock for the Democrats. But if I told you there are 7 doors and there's $1 million behind one of those doors, you might say to yourself, "Wow, I got a pretty good chance of winning $1 million." So there's still a 1 in 7 0.7 chance Republicans keeping control, as far as 538 says. So it's certainly not out of the question.
I just want on the record, I would pick the door with nothing behind it. Just shows you my luck. Adam Kelsey, ABC News political correspondent. Thanks for checking in.